Hi, welcome back to class. Moving on to week 2 in public administration, we are going to start utilizing the text. So I hope you have it ordered. If not, order it because the first quiz is going to be over, of course, the textbook. It's open book quiz, but I will provide 2 weeks for you to complete that. This textbook is fairly interesting. It goes over the regular aspects of public administration that we study. However, it also breaks down to look at three major approaches to public administration: managerial approach, the political approach, and the legal approach. So if you go on to study public administration in grad school, you'll of course study legal. One of the first classes you should take would be administrative law, which gets into looking at administrative studies through a legal framework, which might not. It comes off quite different than other law classes you've taken. It gets really into process and looking at, is process actually followed through correctly, and sometimes not even looking at the outcome of the process, but just the process itself. As for politics, this is an aspect of political science. We use politics as a way to deal with problems in this country, and public administration is heavily involved in the policy cycle. So when policy is implemented, often agencies are created to help ensure them, and then there's nonprofits that feed in to work along with this. And then, of course, the managerial approach. You can't study public administration without looking at the managerial aspects. So this looks at some crossovers into the business world, also looks at some differences, and this chapter will break into that as well. As you, I'm sure, noticed from the very first reading in the first week, is this is heavily based on problems. In public administration, our agencies and our organizations are usually here to deal with an existing problem or to help something move along. So everything from transportation to the military, they all have something they're trying to do and problems they're trying to get around. Along with that, there's also the field of nonprofit sector, which is heavily studied in this field as well, and a lot of people who go into public administration move along and work for nonprofits, and they are also consistently dealing with problems. They're usually founded with the idea to solve a particular problem or to fill a niche. But we also, in doing so and looking at how there's similarities between business to get stuff done, there's also quite a few differences. So governments do operate much differently than private firms. That's why it's not always a good idea to have somebody who's really good at business and think they might be really good at politics. It doesn't always work out well. And there's numerous examples throughout time to look at that. But businesses and governments alike do provide services. So again, the similarities have to be looked at. We have a system in this country that is characterized by a dependence of state and federal governments on each other. So the federal government relies on states to carry through with some of its tasks, and the state government relies on the federal government. So we look at the idea of contemporary federalism. We also look at the value of collaboration. So what's the value of doing business together? What's the value of nonprofits, local governments, city governments, state governments, and the federal government working together? How can they provide services better and address issues? This chapter will also look at bureaucratic organizations, and in doing so, realize that they are not always large, they are not always impersonal, and they don't always have a clear hierarchy. You could have a bureaucratic organization that is relatively flat and does a pretty good job of being responsive and maintaining personalization of its employees. So organizations could look different, but in social science we often generalize, and that happens quite a bit as we're writing about bureaucracies. So this section we're going to get into looking at different styles of decision making too. What works for some people in some agencies might not work for others. A flat organization might be great for a nonprofit like the one I work at, but not work so well with a police department. So we have to really balance how these organizations work together internally to see how they should be run and maybe make prescriptions on change. So in looking at this class, I hope you notice that we are moving on to be a class that's focused on solving problems. And the assignment we're going to do this week is we're going to carry on with our discussions. So last week's discussion on Wilson, who is a very well-read author, you're going to respond to each other's posts. And this week, what we're going to do is I'm going to have you do a basic internet search and find an agency, an organization. It can be a nonprofit, and find out when they were created, what problem they were trying to solve, or what service they're trying to provide. This is a good place to start with a class like this. Prior semesters, I used the creation of the EEOC. In the last couple of years, the sessions of their website that I utilize have been taken down. So I think this will be a good switch off from that assignment. So again, what you're going to do is you're going to find an organization, an agency, or a nonprofit, and you're going to discuss what problem they are working to ameliorate or get rid of, or what service they're trying to provide. Then you're going to just give a link to that organization and a brief description of what they're trying to do. That's just going to be your initial post, and this week we're going to be responding to last week's post. So my classes, I always use a weaving technique for discussion. So this week you'll put your initial post and discuss last week's post you made. And that should make sense as we move along. And it helps us weave the class together moving forward. There's also going to be a short writing based on the chapter. I'll give you 2 weeks for that because I do know some people don't have their textbook yet. So I'll give you 2 weeks to get that in. And of course, 2 weeks to get your first quiz. If you have any questions, make sure you reach out to me. Send me an email at my BHSU email address. Make sure you put in the subject line the title of the class, or put public administration. Anything to let me know it's not spam, or something I need to know that this is something I need to read. So I'll go through there, and I pay attention to my students first, so make sure you put that this is indeed a class. If you have any questions, make sure you shoot me an email. I'm really excited about the semester. I regret that I don't get to meet you face to face because, looking at your introduction post, there's amazing people in this class, and I'd love to get to know you better. But if you have any questions, give me a call. I could do a telephone conversation with you. We can meet up if you're in Spearfish, but I will answer. All right, thank you so much, and have a great week.